showing off what we've been doing. Okay, are you seeing that screen share?
Yes.
Good. All right. Okay, welcome to the release of the Conflict System Zine. This is a project that, depending on how you count, a bunch of us have been working on for a few years and building a body of work thinking about how we approach conflict in online space. And I'm going to just get us started a little bit here, but we've got a bunch of other voices coming into the uh, to tell you more about it. And at the end, we'll share QR codes for how you can get your hands on the digital and physical versions of this zine. We still have free physical copies available that you can sign up to order, so stay tuned for that. To get started, I want to just say a little bit about what motivated this project. Um, First of all, if you're comfortable sharing, maybe pop into the chat an example with as much or as little detail as you might want to share about contexts in which you've been in an online community, maybe an offline one as well, that fell apart because of a resolvable conflict because something that maybe started little blew up and got bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. In many ways, I think it's the case that online spaces have really failed to set up the tools and the habits, the cultures necessary for addressing conflict. This is certainly something I've experienced in my practice, in my uh, life as a kind of both researcher and hobbyist in online spaces that little things often blow up. And a big part of the reason for that is that the companies that are building these spaces, the spaces we rely on for our communities online, are not really concerned with helping us address our conflict. They're concerned with protecting themselves. And so that has been their priority, making tools that support their ability to protect themselves, not our ability as users to resolve conflicts. And this is, in some respect, this is a problem that runs deep, that touches on issues like sexual harassment, sexual assault, racism, really harmful experiences that people have had so often online. And it's also a something that has, I think, contributed to the political culture that we find ourselves in. When we think of language like so-called cancel culture, which is a co-optation, a kind of reactionary co-optation of a term that came out of Black Twitter. The idea that people are being kind of over-punished for certain speech acts, I think actually connects to this problem as well, that we don't have the tools to have proportional responses when we feel harmed. And so the only way to feel like we can get some accountability is to kind of drive someone out of a space. And the means of repair often aren't there. And many people who've worked in conflict in offline spaces have noticed this, have noticed that we behave in ways online that we wouldn't allow ourselves and each other to get away with offline. And I think we have an opportunity to change this. Right now, I think we're in a moment where the kind of AI hype is turning attention away from conventional social media. Meta, which used to be understood as a social media company, has recently declared in court, for instance, that they're now a kind of content delivery platform, essentially an AI slop platform. Um, the design of social spaces, I think, is less of a fundamentally commercial activity than it used to be. And I think we have a new opportunity to design spaces really with communities and positive social outcomes in mind. And you'll hear from people today who are doing that. And to do that right, I think we need to bring into dialogue a wealth of experience from offline conflict resolution and bring some of those lessons online. And that's what we've tried to do with this project. And we've tried to ask, how can we seed a new wave of online experience design that takes conflict seriously? To say a bit about what we have been doing over the past year in particular, I'm going to turn it over to my collaborator at MedLab, Stephanie Abdullah, here at CU Boulder. Stephanie, take it away. Are you there?
Yes, I'm here. Thank you, Nathan, for this wonderful introduction. Thank you all for being here. So wonderful to see so many people interested in this work we're doing. And yeah, I'm currently project lead at the Media Economies Design Lab, working directly with Nathan and our other fellows. And last semester, I was very pleased to take lead on organizing what we ended up calling the Online Dispute Systems Workshop, which was held in March of this year here at CU Boulder. And we held a one-day workshop bringing in about 30 participants that were varied from a very interdisciplinary range of areas, from academics to practitioners, technologists, organizers. And really what we were hoping in with bringing all these people together is so we could foster dialogue around many of these things Nathan was raising in the introduction, and especially think, is there a name here? Is there a field here that we could be addressing, that we could name more properly to address conflict systems within the online space? And mainly our goal in bringing all these people together was to really rethink matters of conflict and accountability and how they are mediated in digital environments. And obviously, a lot of our conversations revolved around understanding what are the lessons, as Nathan pointed out, that we can take from offline spaces. We do have obviously many systems already put together for conflict or to attempt conflict resolution offline. Do they all work in online spaces? Do they require any changes, any rethinking around their structures? Or is it a matter of really building new systems from scratch? Other questions that we addressed in this workshop were, well, started with understanding, and this is Nathan's provocation in the beginning of this conversation, which I think is always very relevant. What are the conflicts that we've experienced online, right? And did we feel like we had the tools to address, to mediate those conflicts in those spaces? So those were that was also a question we asked ourselves. And especially, how can we support the development of tools and habits in online spaces that could help us become more accountable in online spaces? We were happy to address some of these questions during this workshop. And in my opinion, I was even happier to see how many of those we couldn't yet address, which opens a lot of doors, I guess, to thinking how much more there is to say about conflict resolution, conflict systems, dispute systems. And I guess we're still trying to name this a little bit. And it leads me to talking about some of these open questions that were left, and I guess some of the expectations that we have from now on, which, in my opinion, being someone from Brazil, is one important thing for me is to make sure how are we in conversation with people doing this work elsewhere, right? Obviously, we had a language constraint in this workshop that we held. It was in English. We had also like financial limitations. So we were talking to people who are mostly based in the US. And the question is, how do we expand this conversation, and how do we learn from other communities, from other environments, and above all, from non-Western systems that might already be in place? So in terms of like visions for me in the future about like conflict systems and this whole conversation, which I hope will be sparked through the zine, uh, are a lot about how can we continue expanding this field. How can we be in conversation with not only other communities, but also in a way that bridges academia with practice-based work that ranges from corporative work to activism? These are questions I'm really hoping we can continue addressing. And later in the moment when we open up for discussion, I would love to hear if anyone has any ideas. Thank you.
Thank you, Stephanie. And before I turn it over to our next speakers, I just want to make sure to thank some of the people who've made this possible. This project was instigated through a collaboration with Dorothy Howard, who I hope is here, who's been doing some extraordinary thinking about this kind of these questions, especially in the Wikipedia community, and also to the Project Liberty Institute, which financially supported this project, this convening, and this publication. With that, I want to turn it over to the designer of this extraordinary zine who hand wove the textures that you'll experience in it, Drew Hornbein, who's someone we at MedLab have had the pleasure of working with on multiple projects. And you'll see if you look at our past work, you'll see that each one is totally unique. So I wanted to bring Drew up for a couple minutes just to share a bit about the visual work that went into this project. Drew?
Yeah, hi everybody. Thanks so much, Nathan. Very excited to show off some of these things. We got started on this, and I made some mood boards, and we got talking about it, and then Stephanie had some idea, just the seed of an idea about how, and you can see on this picture that's by my name, how the front of something that is sewn is so neat and pretty, but then when you look behind the scenes, it's this total mess. And I did this first. I can't see my screen, so hopefully I'm showing you all this. I did this first experiment with just the word conflict and thinking about how we can, this is just hand stitched on a piece of paper, and then taking that and running with that idea, came up with the overall design for the book. And Nathan is a little inaccurate. I did not. Here's the front cover on the physical front cover. I didn't hand stitch this. The Denver Public Library and some other public maker spaces offer like embroidery printers. So I was able to make these designs, lay them out, and then print them on a machine, and then scan those in and use those throughout so you can see the messiness of the conflict system behind. I'm sure y'all have had some experiences of people looking at your project and being like, wow, you're all so organized, everything's so neat, and then you're like, oh wow, you were not inside that thing that looks so neat and proper. So that was the big inspiration for that. And it was really fun to make some of these designs and see them print, and figure out this entire embroidery. I've only done like hand stitching and stuff, so I have a little bit of experience, but yeah, nothing like this. So it was extremely fun. Always fun to work with Nathan and the Med Lab on these zines. Um, and yeah, is there anything else to say? Just did the layout, did this design, um, really thinking about that concept of what's behind the scenes, um, and making sort of the implicit explicit is one of my ideas when it comes to conflict in online spaces. So I hopefully you can all see what I'm holding up. Front stage, backstage, exactly. Yeah, I think that's all from me. Just another really fun project. Here's a fun one. Made a little browser, stitched a little browser window for the different examples. And yeah, once again, another excellent, fun project out of the lab. Really proud of this one, and had a lot of fun doing it. Thanks, Nathan.
Thank you, Drew. It's awesome to see the fabric itself.
Yeah.
All right, we're now going to turn over to some of the folks who participated in the workshop that Stephanie was talking about. Some of these people may be familiar to Metagov regulars because they're people who've been doing really extraordinary work for years thinking about governance in online space. First, we'll turn to Coraline Ada Emke.
Hi, everybody. My name is Coraline. I'm the co-founder of the Organization for Ethical Source, founding godmother with the Motherboard Tech Justice Collective, and founding board member of the Governance Futures Network. Happy to be here today. I was thrilled to take part into this in the conflict project. And the first thing that came to mind was a project that I tried to launch late in 2019 called Beacon. And Beacon, basically, I'm not going to show any screenshots, so I have to apologize. Beacon was started in 2019, and it looks like Twitter Bootstrap, and I thought the screenshot might be distracting from what it actually does. It needs a fresh design, needs a fresh coat of paint. But the skeleton of Beacon is what I want to talk about. When I created Contributor Covenant in 2014, which is maybe you know the most widely adopted code of conduct for digital communities. When I created it in 2014, and I didn't understand or anticipate how it would transform the practice of open source. But today, codes of conduct are a de facto standard in most open communities. And while we're seeing that tools for governance are evolving, and that's a big part of what Metagov does, there's not a lot of technical infrastructure for community. And I think of Beacon as community infrastructure. Um, Even organizations with formal code of conduct or community moderation committees usually rely on group emails and Google Docs to coordinate their work. And this leaves a lot of communities without really viable options for enforcing codes of conduct. And moderators lack tools for effective conflict mediation. And this has a human cost. And I think, especially in a time where conflict is becoming a norm, we have a rollback of equity measures, and we have increasing divides. I think it's really the time. I think that it's no longer optional to invest in community infrastructure. So Beacon was started a prototype with a small group grant from the Linux Foundation. We ended up making a fully functional MVP. Attracted a group of values-aligned open source contributors. We ran a private beta that included Symfony, the GNOME Foundation, Debian, Node.js, IFME, EMF Camp, and Kubernetes, and gathered feedback toward a V1. And then, unfortunately, funding ran out, COVID happened, and the project got shelved. So what we're hoping to do is connect with some host communities to reimagine what Beacon might look like for today's age. And basically, the idea is that Beacon would be a locally hosted, community-owned, community-run platform that communities could spin up to share their codes of conduct and share their transparent enforcement policies and provide a system for fair and safe reporting, fair and safe and transparent processes, meeting reporters, moderators, and code of conduct respondents where they are in the moment, and working toward repair, healing communities rather than punitive measures. The work was getting Beacon up to date from a technological perspective. There are 151 first order dependencies that had to be migrated. And I also had to migrate the platform 3 major versions and the programming language 1 major version. So Beacon is ready to start redeveloping. We're hoping for a community partnership, we're hoping for funding, and we're hoping for community-led governance where the constituents of Beacon's user base would be in charge of the roadmap. So really a community process as opposed to the benevolent dictator for life open source project that I think the first version imagined. So I just saw someone asking if there's a link to Beacon. Beacon is very much a prototype at this stage and is not available publicly. So I'm sorry, but yeah, there's the source code. Don't judge too harshly. It's a 6-year-old source code. So that's about all I have for Beacon. Thank you, Nathan.
Thank you, Caroline. I just saw a question again about whether the zine is available. We will share the link in just a few minutes after we hear from a couple more folks. I want to turn over to Jenny Luzhang from Plot Twisters, who also made an extraordinary contribution to this project. Jenny?
Hi, everyone. My name is Jenny. So I'm the founder of Plot Twisters, as Nathan mentioned. We're a game design collective for self-reflection and journaling tools. I guess before I introduce this, Nathan, are you able to play the YouTube video from this link? Okay,
Yeah,
perfect.
let's see how it goes. Let me know if you all have trouble hearing.
Plot Twisters presents Small Hassles Court, a new minigame in Twisterland, our game world for self-reflection. Small Hassles Court is a playful space to navigate little conflicts between two people of equal power dynamic, friends, partners, and collaborators. Small hassles are usually about differences in opinion or miscommunication, from a dirty bowl in the sink to a comment that keeps you up at night. This is a space to address these problems, which may seem small but can have big implications. However, the Small Hassles Court is not like other courts. It's medieval, but not in any historically accurate way. Unlike the common idea of a courtroom, there's no judge or punishments. The outcome is between the two people who are having the conflict. They decide what their resolution looks like. Players choose avatars that reflect their emotional state. Then they enter the court and meet Harry, a chronically overworked dragon that gently leads them through their emotional landscapes. With a shared session code, 2 players can board the elevator where they can select tags to describe the issue from their perspective. Then they enter the court. With the help of a fancy tapestry, players go through several rounds of conflict negotiation, sharing their positions and proposals for solutions. They can play for as long as they need until they reach an agreement or decide to accept their differences. Holding a grudge about a bowl in the sink? Have dirty laundry to air out? Come together in the Small Hassles Court. Just 2 people, a dragon, and a chance at figuring it out.
Awesome. Thanks, Nathan. So that was our little intro video for Small Hassles Court. So through Metagov last year, our game design collective created a game, Small Hassles Court, for nurturing self-governance skills digitally, and the fellowship is called Governable Space Makers. So our creation was this 2-player game where players can advocate for their needs and their values in a conflict and make mutual decisions about how to move forward. And actually, in the comments, I've linked our Metagov write-up where you can find that video, plus some other documentation on it, and also a link to smallhasslescourt.com, which is the current prototype of our project live online. So with Small Hassle Court, we wanted to really subvert the idea that conflict is this baneful thing to avoid. So even in the name Small Hassles Court, we wanted to create this alternative to traditional carceral systems of courtrooms. And instead of something extractive and adversarial, we wanted to facilitate conflict resolution to happen in the room with the people involved. So we really believe that conflict resolution begins with the small stuff. So understanding that needs and values at that smallest level, the interpersonal level, can help us build skills for larger dispute systems and navigating them at scale. So basically using the game environment as a way to kind of train that muscle. So our team, which was me, Amanda, and Joe, who aren't here today, but we've done a lot of research in the last few years on emotional literacy and communication. And during the fellowship, we focused on narrative-driven conflict resolution frameworks. And through this, we developed a round-based game structure where it's a two-player game and players can sit and basically communicate their positionality and their needs, the values that they're advocating for, and then go through this kind of exchanging process to come to solutions and ideas together. And the concepts we focused on were really that deliberation process, so giving both people the ability to contribute to that solution and framing it around nonviolent communication or NVC. And we also wanted to prioritize de-escalation in the game environment itself. So the game, as introduced in the video, had Harry, the dragon character, as this kind of like kooky facilitator, not a judge, not, there's not a power dynamic there, but more so just like there's this character that kind of can bring a little bit of comic relief and an environment that is kind of playful and has some like logical subversions in itself. So we were really excited about games as a possibility for that subversion because they're obviously interesting multimedia artifacts that can relay some of these concepts of deliberation and VC through, storytelling, but also through interactivity. So the way that the character was designed, the way that the court is set up, basically we try to communicate that conflicts are normal and they are things to learn through rather than things to cancel each other over or avoid or treat as these like baneful things. So yeah, our big UX takeaway from the game design is that not every conflict is going to get resolved, right? Like some of us are just bad at doing dishes and some of us have like frustrating communication quirks and these kind of idiosyncrasies are normal. And we learned that sometimes, players can find tangible agreements to resolve their conflicts, but oftentimes the game might just be a place for creating mutual understanding and patience, which can be a solution in itself. So fostering that emotional clarity and recognition can be just as important. So yeah, the game launched earlier this year at smallhasslescourt.com, but still a work in progress. We're in general trying to figure out how to make the UX, I think, less pedantic. We spend a lot of time doing like research in conflict resolution frameworks. So there are parts of it that can feel like pretty like programmed curriculum vibes. So we're trying to make it more fun and continue doing some play testing. So yeah, we're excited to keep making progress and we'll keep you guys updated and excited to be part of this collection as well.
Thank you, Jenny. I think it's just so striking, like when you really consider it, have you ever experienced anything like these projects, Beacon and Small Hassles Court? Have you ever had a process in online spaces where you could actually adjudicate a conflict and the technical tools and the culture, the dragon, or whatever is appropriate for a given community were there for you? To me, that was just such a revelation of seeing these tools start to form. Is this the recognition that wow, we haven't even begun, and there's so much to explore. Um, Finally, I want to turn it over to Dr. Kay Coghill, who was our keynote speaker for the workshop. And Dr. Kay has been leading community at Black Sky Algorithms, which is doing extraordinary work in social media spaces. Dr. Kay, are you there?
I'm here. Can you hear me?
Go ahead. Thank you.
Hi, like Nathan said, my name is Dr. Kay Coghill. I'm the head of community for Black Sky Algorithms, and I was also the keynote speaker for this particular, I consider it a meetup because we had a really good time talking about the different projects. We were able to have a lot of downtime to break into groups and like really discuss what it looks like to have situations online that involve conflict resolution. And like Jenny said, like we kind of all came to the consensus that some conflicts may not be resolved, but that doesn't mean that we shouldn't have those resources available. So particularly with Black Sky, we are a virtual third space that really works to empower others to use our infrastructure to build their own community and to also be able to use our other tools to moderate against things like anti-Blackness and misogynoir, and also be able to go through like a democratic process using the People's Assembly where people can submit their own ideas for the app. They can submit things that they have questions about. We have done some different surveys as well through People's Assembly asking about different features and labels. And the reason why this is important when it comes to conflict resolution is that because we are empowering our community to have a say in their social media experience, we want to make sure that our infrastructure and the products that we are creating allows people to actually have input, right? And not just, oh, submit a review, or you can send an email here that doesn't get answered. These are like actual things that inform the features that we create. It informs the communities that we amplify, and it also informs how we look at the future of Black Sky. One of the products that we have that is really foundational at this point to us building communities that can also operate similarly to Black Sky with their own moderation, their own membership, their being on a server is our product Acorn. And Acorn is an opportunity for any community to be able to have their own, essentially their own client, their own app. On our infrastructure where they can use their own branding, they can have their own handles, they can choose who has admin privileges. They can create their own labeler through the protocol to hook up to Acorn to be able to moderate. And because they are a part of the larger Black Sky community, we also, as we're building out our mobile app, which is currently in public beta, they can also have their members use our mobile app as well for their communities. So they don't have to download a new app. They don't have to be almost like pigeonholed to using just Black Sky specific things. It can be branded for their communities. And we do not have control over how they manage their communities. We give them the infrastructure. Particularly in my role, I work with the Acorn customers to help them build out their communities that they need support. We also provide them with any other types of like consultations they may need, whether that is trust and safety support of how to moderate. And it just really allows us to promote this idea of self-governance and also, like I said before, empowering people to have the self-efficacy to resolve conflicts, have that open communication, and to be able to create environments that benefit their particular community while also being part of a larger community. The last thing I will share is that on our roadmap, we are really looking forward to bringing in different types of communities to Acorn and also expanding our growth with Black Sky as a community. So that way people who may not know about at protocol or know about open social web are able to tap in and experience what it feels like to have a actual space that can be safer, a space that can actually mitigate most conflicts, and a space where they can control their social media experience and feel a bit of digital freedom that they may not have experienced on other platforms that don't have these particular tools and infrastructure to support them. So yeah. And there's some links dropped in here for Acorn, People Assembly. Also, if you all have not made an account yet, please go to blacksky.community. Black Sky is a community platform for everyone. And we have special products specifically for the Black diaspora, who is like the base of our foundation. Thank you.
Thank you. And one of the things I've admired most about Black Sky's work is not only the innovation and creativity that's going on there, but the way it's been influencing that whole App Proto ecosystem and beyond. You know, this is a place where ideas about what social media could be are being worked out in real time, and it's just amazing to see it. Thank you so much, Dr. K. Okay, the time has come. The zine is now available for you. You can use these QR codes. I've just popped links in the chat. Please enjoy. We've got there's still some spots left for requesting free print copies. We'll send you a couple in the mail if you put your address and you format it correctly. We just love to hear from you about what you read, what you encounter in it. Thank you so much for being part of this. And now, because this is the Metagov seminar, we're going to open it up. So if there's anything you want to ask or any feedback or comments you'd like to share for any of the speakers, now's the time. Val, can I turn it over to you to draw folks in?
Absolutely, yes. Thank you all. Thank you to our speakers. And if you have questions, feel free to raise your hand using Zoom and we'll call on you to ask them. Kim, go for it.
Oh, so yeah, thank you for this. It sounds like a really interesting load of projects, and I'm really excited to read the zine. Um, I would say though, with my like critical hat on, I think this felt like a lot of like solutions to conflict, and maybe could be judged overall to be quite like techno-solutionist, because I think often when there's a conflict going on, and like I asked in the chat too, I wonder if you have a working definition of what an online community is, because like I think a lot of fallouts are like real life people who fall out on WhatsApp or Discord. This is like the most recent thing that's happened to me. I think like sometimes I think there's like a brutality to those spaces sometimes where like people end up managing a Discord or a WhatsApp group on behalf of their friends. But then there's also the other thing, which is people we meet online and primarily interact with online. Um, but I think I may be a little shy away from the idea that what we need to resolve conflict is more technological solutions. And I think like I'm really interested to kind of hear about like maybe the conflicts that have inspired the things people made more than like the tools they've made themselves. Does that make sense? Like I think there's an emotional core here that feels really hard to get at of feeling through these situations. And I'd like to hear more about that, I suppose. Thank you.
Yeah, I can hop in. So for a little bit of background, I have been researching online gender-based violence and digital misogynoir for the past 12 years. And before I joined Black Sky, the bulk of my work was looking at what was happening to Black women, non-binary, and gender-expansive folks offline and how that translates to online harm. And that is really the basis of a lot of the work that I've supported with Black Sky, is that we're all full of organizers, so we're on the ground. So we're not only building solutions in the digital space. We are giving people an infrastructure for their communities to be able to convene for those types of solutions. With us making the first moderation tool for anti-Blackness and misogynoir to ever exist online, that also has opened up broader conversations with how to also handle those situations offline. And I think what would be really interested that you might find interesting is a book called Glitch Feminism by Legacy Russell, where she really goes into talking about how the our online and offline, like away from keyboard selves, still have a connection to how we engage with each other. And I think for Black Sky in particular, we are looking more so at what's happening to Black people, what has historically happened to Black folks in particular, to inform how we make solutions online that can also be used in organizing spaces in universities amongst different groups as well. So that way no one is left out of the conversation if they are not, let's say, really into tech. Hopefully that answers the question from our end.
I'm happy to speak on the Beacon side. Techno-solutionism is one of the risks that was raised early on in the Beacon project. And I want to make it very clear that technology is not used in the mediation process at all. The technology of Beacon is used to communicate about your code of conduct, to accept a report about a code of conduct violation, and a tool for moderators to talk amongst themselves and share information in a private and more streamlined way than a Google Doc or an email chain. So very sensitive to the threat certainly would not be looking at anything like mediator tools or anything like that involving an AI system, for example. Mediation is very much a human process. I think conflict resolution is very much a human process. And you're right to call out that technology won't solve for that.
On the small hassles court side as well, I think just echoing that, some of the conflicts that I think inspired our interest in this were like within our own game design collective, we came into a lot of like creative conflicts and like tensions around like contribution and how people were contributing and ownership and like things like that. And a lot of the small hassles court, the development of those principles around like communicating our needs or, you know, our desires to be seen or understood, I think came from those conflicts. I think that one caveat I definitely see in our work is like there's a level of consent, right? Like we all wanted to continue working together. It wasn't like any of us wanted to like jump ship and just abandon the project. So we tried to find a solution facilitated by this tool that we all kind of already like implicitly consented to. So I think it doesn't maybe solve for problems where like in other communities where like people don't already like consent to like wanting to continue a relationship, how those might be addressed. But yeah, it's small households court is like for people who want to maintain relationships and finding a way to do that in kind of a playful space. So hopefully that sheds some light on like our context.
Maybe we move to Roshan next.
Thanks. Hi, everyone. My name's Rashawn. I work with I'm the director of democracy innovation for the National Coalition for Dialogue and Deliberation. It's too many syllables, I'm sorry, but ncdd.org. And first, I just want to invite those of you who are like part of this to check us out and see if there's ways that that our network of people who are conflict professionals and facilitators might help support more of this work, because I think this is really exciting and important. And I wonder, I'm just now getting to like actually take in the zine, so excuse me if this is already here, but I'm wondering like, are there principles that you came up with, sort of baseline, this is how we need to figure out conflict better in online spaces, recommendations that you're trying to make to broader conflict practitioner spaces, or to people who are designing them in the future? I just wonder if there's some takeaway like, hey, if you learn nothing else, make sure you do this, this, and this in figuring out online spaces. Does any of that sort of thing come out of this effort?
I could say a bit, and you know, maybe Stephanie could build on it if she has something else to add. But actually, the centerfold of the zine is a collection of pieces that we might want to have in place in a conflict system. And these really come to us through one of the participants who you may know, Roshan, Leander Roth from Spring Up here in Colorado, which is an organization that does a lot of facilitation and training around conflict. And this includes things like clear rules and enforcement policies, facilitation resources and training, set aside spaces for conflict, escalation, if the conflict exceeds the space. That's one that I think is actually really, really important to start with, is just to say, okay, if nothing else, if something exceeds our ability to address it internally, where do we go next? Just so people know where that happens. But I think you know, in many respects, what we're offering here is not like a terribly original contribution other kinds of spaces, but that often are not put into place in online spaces intentionally, and that our platforms, or often their platform, somebody else's platform, doesn't really invite us into doing. So you know, for someone like you who's deeply involved in conflict work and this kind of deliberation work, a lot of the things in here might feel really obvious. But it's also striking how they are often still not present in these online spaces.
Yeah, if I may add a little bit to that too. Well, first of all, echo everything Nathan said, and I think one thing we were very cautious and intentional about, considering the lessons from the workshop and then thinking about how we could translate them into the zine, is to not provide one model fits all, because I think it's exactly what we are trying to challenge, right? And as I mentioned in the beginning, when I was talking about some of the limitations I see that are part of this project and also possibilities to expand it, is to like acknowledge that the people who contributed to this project are based in the same country, speak the same language. And I think coming from another context, I would never feel comfortable providing a toolbox that we assume works for everyone, right? So I think if the throughout narrative of the zine, and hopefully the main message that we were able to translate there, is that we should account for history, right? Whatever that may be. And so there's no conflict attempt to resolution or the creation of conflict systems that doesn't acknowledge the history of the community we're talking about, which might be very contextual, which might be very specific, right? And also an acknowledgement of the practices that have been named already, right? And so if there is one lesson to take from the offline, is that we've been able as a global community to name some really important things, right? Some of those mentioned by the people who presented in this panel, but also other people who presented during the workshop. And so I think it's about like understanding contextual realities and considering those broad themes that we brought up in the zine. How could we apply them to this particular knowledges we are talking about?
How about David next?
Hello. I love to see this having been a part of kind of earlier precursors to it. It's wonderful to see how this has taken shape and involving so many different communities. I guess where I come from in a lot of this is, and this may be a segue from what Nathan was outlining. I'm curious about one of the earlier stages of how a community engages with these processes at sort of a governance or foundation level. So I'm curious if any of the participants or contributors have any thoughts about how at early stages of a community's development, be it more focused online with today's context, but also it's something I've experienced with, physical communities, the way in which conflict is integrated into sort of constitutional or foundational thinking about the org seems to play a large role in how things play out for the community and whether they're able to integrate some of these tools. So yeah, I'm just curious, like what folks have encountered in terms of governance or early stage engagement with conflict systems.
I'd say in the open source space, it's non-existent. Open source is just figuring out the need for governance. I'm not talking about like large open source program offices. I'm talking about majority of open source communities. I think codes of conduct were the first foray into governance, because once you have a code of conduct, someone has to enforce it, and someone's enforcing it. You have to have a procedure, and if you have a procedure, you have to have decision making. So I think a lot of open source communities are discovering the need for governance tools, but they haven't even covered any of the fundamentals, let alone moving into sophisticated concepts of equity and justice. So at this point, we're still migrating away from benevolent dictators toward community governance, and it's certainly baby steps in the open source community, and there are some of the large problems facing the open source community at the same time. So attention is divided.
Should we just grab the rest of the folks on Stack and then we can wrap up? We'll do a final round.
Sure, yeah. Greg, I saw you posted a question in chat around, is this just interpersonal? Do you want to give, or group to group? Do you want to give any voice to that rapid fire? And maybe we can get to Cleo as well.
Thanks. This is all really interesting. I think my question is probably a longer conversation we don't have time for. But in addition to interpersonal behavioral conflict resolution processes and tools, I'm thinking about the need for better knowledge and know-how and practices, and potentially also tools for inter-organizational conflict, for conflicts between people and the organizations that are supposedly serving them. I think there's a lot of conflicts that don't show up as, flame wars, that we have even less experience really productively engaging with, conflicts around rules and power that may involve groups. And I'm looking through the zine, and it seems like there might be some of that in here, and I'm just eager to see where these conversations go from there. Thank you.
Awesome. Cleo, you want to go for it with a minute to spare?
Hi, everyone. Really nice to virtually meet you and learn more about your projects. Jenny, I'm super inspired by what you all are creating and excited to learn more and really excited to dive into the zine. I've been working in community-based practices for the last 20 years, and started outside of the US, and over the last 10 years have been really focused on activism specifically within the US context. And I feel like there's been such a rise of this cancel culture that I feel like has been kind of nourished by this like looking outwards and pointing outwards, and kind of this othering that takes place that's, I think, very nourished within a lot of activist cultures. And through that, have been really drawn to birthing a campaign that we're going to be launching later this year with, Julieta is also on this call. We work at a nonprofit called Amplifier, and we build visual art campaigns to uplift social and environmental movements. And we're launching a campaign called Peace as a Practice, and it's all about nonviolent tools for conflict transformation. And so just really interested in how you all are planning on distributing this work, distributing this zine, because that's a big part of our nonprofit's work, is actually trying to reach hundreds of millions of people with physical tools. And so I feel like there might be a way to collaborate here, and curious just how this work translates outside of the digital space. I feel like a lot of these conversations can become very intellectual, and things like governance just rings alarm bells for me, because I'm like, well, then who decides the governance? And like at the end of the day, there's still groups of people telling other people how they should be behaving. So yeah, it's obviously like a very messy conversation, this idea of conflict, but it's been really relaxing for me to see it as a practice and to just be in this kind of messy dialogue with each other. So yeah, just looking forward to learning more ways of engaging with you all and getting to know you.
Thank you so much for that. The Metagov seminar ends on time, so I'm afraid I'm gonna have to cut things short in terms of further responses. But thank you for those points. I think they highlight the respect in which this project and this zine is really meant to be a conversation starter, not a conversation ender. Questions like conflicts among different groups, I think that's something largely that needs to be a future phase of this work. In terms of in-person communities, you can, in addition to receiving print copies from us, we have print copies. We have the print files on the website, so you can also, if it's useful, download this and share it in your communities. Please, spread the word. If you find it useful, share it out. And in terms of governance design, actually, before too long, we'll be releasing a new version of MedLab's tool, Community Rule, which is for designing governance frameworks for communities. And it has the new version will have much more attention to conflict built into it. But above all, thank you to all the speakers, to Coraline and Jenny and Dr. K, and to Stephanie, my collaborator in this process throughout. Thank you so much. Thank you, Val, for hosting us at the seminar today. And we can continue the conversation in the Metagov Slack for those of you who are there. And always feel free to reach out. Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thanks, everyone.
People. Woo! Have a great day, everyone.